Welcome back to the BuzzFeed News Bunker here in Parliament House in Canberra, where it is another sitting week edition of OzPol Live. My name is Alice Workman, and we have, frankly, just a huge show for you this week. But first off, in some breaking news, the federal court has reissued a subpoena for Jobs Minister Michaelia Cash to give evidence in the Australian Workers' Union court case challenging the legitimacy of the raids on their offices in October last year. Now, it should be worth mentioning, these subpoenas were first issued by the AWU in March, and BuzzFeed understands that not only has Michaelia Cash been reissued with a subpoena to give evidence, but the AWU will also be subpoenaing her former media advisor, David de Garis, and the Fair Work Ombudsman official, Mark Lee. Now, of course, this is all kicked off last year when the media was tipped off about the raids by Michaelia Cash's former senior media advisor, David de Garis, who subsequently resigned. And the AW case challenges the legitimacy of the investigation by the Registered Organisations Committee into donations that the union made to GetUp when current Labor leader Bill Shorten was in charge. Now, the interesting thing about the AW court case is that it's actually been put on hold indefinitely until the Australian Federal Police's investigation into the media leaks has been completed. Now, we had the AFP Commissioner Andrew Colvin in front of Senate estimates last week, where he put his hands in the air and said, "We don't know when it will be over." There is no timeline, no estimated completion date. So it looks like we won't actually be seeing Michaelia Cash front up in court anytime soon. And look, we're not going to see her front up in estimates either. She was meant to appear in front of 7 estimates today alongside the Registered Organisations Commission, and I'm sure the Labor Party had a truck ton of questions to ask her, but she is a no-show, sending along Assistant Minister Zed Seselja in her place. So it's unlikely that we'll hear anything from Michaelia Cash today. So instead, I'm going to put a few questions to her colleague, the Financial Services and Revenue Minister, Kelly O'Dwyer, who'll be joining us here on the set live in a couple of minutes. If you've got any questions for Kelly O'Dwyer, you can hit me up with the hashtag BFOzPol. Any questions whatsoever. I'm sure the Minister really wants to hear about super, but maybe you've got some other issues that you'd like to ask her about. I'll also be joined by Amy Remeikis from The Guardian Australia. She'll be here to chat about Michaelia Cash and Senate estimates. And a bit later on, I'll be joined by Myles Morgan from SBS and Rachel Baxendale from The Australian. But let's go to the biggest news in Parliament House today, and it, of course, is about Barnaby Joyce. After a week of controversy over his decision to take a paid television interview, the former Deputy Prime Minister and Nationals leader has decided to take an extended personal leave from his parliamentary duties, effective immediately, so he's not here today. And that will run until the end of June, meaning he actually won't be back in Parliament until after the winter break, which will be in August. But if you add up the sitting days, it's 2 weeks, 2 days this week and then 2 weeks next month. So it's actually not that many face-to-face days he loses in Parliament House. Now, Barnaby Joyce's colleagues say he's been under a huge amount of stress over the last year. Not only did he split with his wife of 24 years and have a son with his ex-staffer and new partner, Vicky Campion. But let's not forget, last year we also found out he was a Kiwi dual citizen and he got booted from Parliament from the High Court and had to survive a by-election. Nationals backbencher Andrew Broad said, "Look, if Barnaby wants some leave, give him some leave." Quote, "Leave him alone and hopefully he'll come back and contribute to the direction of the country in his own time. The thing we always need to be mindful of is that members of Parliament are people too." But not everyone agrees with that. Darren Hinch, the crossbencher at Human Headline, says Barnyard Barnaby took squillions of dollars as Deputy PM while illegally sitting in the House, was only elected a few months ago. How can he be eligible for 11 weeks of taxpayer-funded paid personal leave? Well, what sparked this need for privacy and personal leave? Ironically, it's news that Barnaby Joyce will be doing a tell-all interview with Channel 7. There's a preview of what that interview will look like that was released last night.
Their illicit love affair rocked Australia.
Everything was worth it for this.
Now, Vicky Campion comes clean.
You can't help. I couldn't help it. You can't help who you fall in love with.
I failed.
The Sunday night exclusive, nothing off limits.
What was said?
I can't repeat the words.
The people who tried to stop this baby being born.
Political pressure. They said if you don't, they're going to come after you.
They did.
Meet her little baby at the centre of it all.
I would do anything to protect him.
The only place to see the interview Australia's talking about is exclusively on 7 Sunday night.
7 reportedly is paying $150,000 for this fireside chat with Barnaby Joyce, his partner Vicky Campion, and glimpses of their newborn son Sebastian. It'll be broadcast this Sunday, but people are already asking questions about whether or not a politician or a politician's spouse should be allowed to accept payment for an interview. When he was asked about it yesterday, though, Barnaby Joyce said, "She made me do it." That's right. He threw his partner Vicky Campion in the deep end and said it was all her idea. He said they'd been trying for privacy for months, but they've had drones fly over their house. They've been stalked by the paparazzi at airports. So if other people were making money off their story, why shouldn't they? And Barnaby Joyce has reportedly told colleagues that he'll put the money into a trust for his newborn son. Well, I'll ask Minister Kelly O'Dwyer in a few minutes if she stands by the comments she made yesterday. In some very strong words, she said that most Australians are pretty disgusted with Barnaby Joyce for taking money for the interview. But I want to know what you think. Hit me up with the hashtag BFOzPol on Twitter. We've already got some tweets coming in. At Angry Exile says, "Don't care. Can we please stop hearing about him?" Well, good luck muting that on your timeline this week. We've also got one from at Miss Kelly Blair, who says he's blaming his girlfriend for accepting the payment. It would be nice if Barnaby would accept responsibility for any of his actions and not blame everyone else. Well, I want to know what you think. Should we all just leave Barnaby Joyce alone like we left Britney alone, or does he have his right to privacy when he did he lose his right to privacy when he agreed to sell his story? Hit me up with the hashtag BFOzPol. But I also want to know, are you actually even going to watch it? The media has been saying that the viewer numbers will be huge, but Energy Minister Josh Frydenberg said on RN this morning, he isn't going near it. He's busy, he's got other things to do. But now in international news, Ireland has voted to overturn its ban on abortion this week. That's right, around 2/3 of almost more than 3 million voters chose to repeal the 8th Amendment, which has kept abortion illegal in almost all circumstances. But you might not know this. In Australia, abortion is still a criminal offence in some states. I'll let my colleague BuzzFeed reporter Gina Rushton explain.
So on Friday, more than 3 million people in Ireland went and voted in a referendum on whether or not to repeal the 8th Amendment, which is the law that says that the unborn and the mother have equal rights to life. And an overwhelming majority voted yes to repeal it, so Ireland's now going to legislate to regulate abortion. What's the situation in Australia? In New South Wales and Queensland, abortion is still in criminal legislation, and there are efforts in both states to decriminalise it. We have safe access zones in some states which protect patients entering clinics from being harassed and intimidated by picketers, and there are efforts in New South Wales in particular next week is going to vote on safe access zone legislation. So in states that don't have them, patients are approached by picketers, handed pamphlets with medically inaccurate information, handed fetal dolls, shown graphic images. We also have a situation in which women have to stump up hundreds of dollars at short notice in order to secure a termination because there's not widespread public access to abortion.
Amy Remeikis, the political reporter for Guardian Australia, joins me. Amy, thanks so much for coming back to BuzzFeed OzPol. You were such a success last time. People want to hear more about OzPol and Beyonce, obviously.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, see if I can get some Rihanna in there today.
We just saw Rihanna behind Gina Ruston in that abortion piece. Now, Amy, first up, big news of the day, Barnaby Joyce. I wanted to ask you, Is it time that we left Barnaby Joyce alone? Has the media been too harsh on him? Is that why he needs to take this personal leave?
Look, I mean, is it about us leaving Barnaby Joyce alone or Barnaby Joyce leaving us alone? I mean, like, the man has not stopped speaking. He went on personal leave for 4 weeks when all of this news broke, completely understandable.
Yeah.
Did interview after interview, standing in his kitchen with his bloody tea towel around his neck like he was a prize fighter. Never seen a tea towel before. Then he's saying it's time to move on. He comes back, it's time to move on, it dies away. Next thing we know, he's getting $150,000 to do an interview and then saying, oh no, please, the privacy. Like, it's just ridiculous. And yesterday, sitting in the chamber, he just looked like a man who had just gone, you know what, I've gone too far. I've made a big mistake. I need to take some time off. So I'm glad that he's doing it. Do I think he will shut up while he's away? No, I don't.
The last time that he took leave before he lost the Deputy Prime Minister job, I think he did an interview every single day, didn't he?
Pretty much. And I think once this interview on Network 7 airs, he'll be doing interviews about the interview. I don't think he can help himself.
One thing I wanted to ask you is we're nearing killing season.
Mm-hmm.
Barnaby is not going to be here next month, which is normally the height of killing season, which is June, July. Do you think this maybe is a saving grace for the Prime Minister? Will he be safe for one more month, knowing that Barnaby Joyce isn't here to wreck and undermine him on the backbench?
Well, he's still got Tony Abbott, so 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But I do think, though, that the by-elections is probably going to give Malcolm Turnbull the biggest breathing room with the killing season. And I think that apart from completely screwing Labor over with their national conference, scheduling them for July 28 gets him right to the end of that sort of killing season, and there's no party room for another couple of weeks if everything gets ruined. So
and that's the only place where a vote can happen.
That is the only place. So I mean, like, what a surprise, we're having by-elections at the end of the killing season. So I think it's given him a bit of breathing room.
Yeah, because if they did topple him, then they would have no chance in Mayo at all, you'd think.
Well, I mean, I don't know how much chance they're going to have in Mayo. I'm one of the people who think that Rebecca Sharkey is probably going to get up. You can prove me wrong. It's on tape now, but
she is a Queenslander. She's not from South Australia, so
exactly. But I was born in Mount Gambier, so you know. But no, I think that I don't think it's so much Mayo. I think it's Braddon and Longman that they're really focusing on, and
seats,
so yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about Michaelia Cash. It was Michaelia Cash Day in estimates yesterday. It was meant to be again today, but she has sent Zed Cizelja along in her place. Now, we've heard that the subpoenas have been reissued for the AW court case, but yesterday she was asked about the AW case. It has been 7 months, Amy, and let's take a look at what she said.
So I have asked you a question that's not been asked before, and I've asked, have you contacted the AFP to tell them that you understand that you're a witness with evidence important to their investigation and that you're willing to assist them? Have you done that?
Senator Cameron, I have answered that question by reference to the public interest immunity claim that Senator Colvin made last week, which was accepted by the relevant committee. And again, though, the extent of my knowledge is set out in my Senate estimates transcripts, along with responses I've given during question time. I have nothing further to add to that evidence.
Okay, Amy, it's been 7 months since this all kicked off. There is an AFP investigation. There's an AW court case. Michaelia Cash is still refusing to talk. When is enough enough? Is this getting ridiculous?
It is complete and utter bullshit. Like, it's just, you've done amazing work on this. I do have to say that. Like, it has been BuzzFeed and Atlas, which has, you know, led this. But the fact that I am still here talking to you about it 7 months later is giving me an eye twitch. And I'm sure it's giving a lot more people, like, a lot more than that. I mean, we have just heard that subpoenas have been reissued in the federal court case, which potentially means that maybe the AFP are starting to wrap up their investigation.
That is what it could mean.
And
I don't think it is.
It could mean, and it could mean that, you know, that we're getting a little bit closer to finding out what went wrong. The committee and estimates have just asked her to come back because she's not answering these questions. So they've just issued a unanimous invitation to say, come on down. I do think that this strategy that they've had of completely ignoring it has done nothing but just undermine her and make her look like she's got something to hide.
Well, that's right. It's obvious. She's obviously been told to shut up because I don't see how answering whether or not you've had any contact with the AFP done an interview, given a statement, any kind of contact at all, how would that impinge on the court case?
It absolutely
on
doesn't.
the investigation?
It absolutely doesn't. It's just a way of trying to, like I do with my crazy, just put it under the rug and just be like, I'll bring that back later. But yeah, it's just a way of trying to hide it. And it is ridiculous because that's why we're still talking about it. If she'd come out and said, yes, release a statement, the AFP have interviewed me, I cannot say any more, it completely stops Labor from being able to ask these questions. We just say, yes, she's being interviewed. We all know that there's a court case. We all know that there is an investigation. Not talking about her role in it has just amplified it so much more than it needs to be.
So do you think that it's time that she potentially stood down?
I think we're getting to that point, actually, and I don't think it's even a reflection on anything that she has or hasn't done. I just think the fact that it's become such a distraction, now, that she can't do her job.
Well, that's what I find interesting is during the reshuffle that happened in December last year, some people actually described her move from Employment Minister to Jobs and Innovation as a promotion. I actually think it was a demotion. I think that they split her responsibilities with Craig Laundy and gave her less to do, which is her reason for not being in front of estimates today, because it's not her portfolio responsibility, even though it all falls under employment. So I wonder whether, could they save face and demote her again? Can you demote another woman from the front bench?
Well, there's that issue as well. I think Turnbull's completely stuck on this one. I don't think he's going to be able to do anything because if he demotes her now or, asks her to step down, then that becomes like an even bigger story. But if he keeps her on, it's still going to keep rolling on. So it's just, they've completely screwed themselves. And it just goes to show once again that this government is so bad at politics. They're just really bad at it. And I don't understand how you can get it wrong so often. Like, go out and talk to people, bring that stuff back, incorporate it into your strategy. It's not that hard.
Amy Remeikis, you haven't thrown in any references to Beyonce
I have not. I failed.
But thanks so much for joining me, Amy Remeikis from The Guardian Australia. And you can keep up to date with her live blog on the Guardian website all of today. Now, one of the biggest stories out of the budget was the government's decision to freeze the ABC's funding. The ABC haven't suggested anything where they think they could cut some tape, but we hit the streets of Sydney to ask you, if you could cut anything from the ABC, what would it be?
All we're doing is freezing the ABC's funding. They can live within their means like families do.
I just don't understand it.
No, I think it's wrong. Totally wrong. It's great to have a commercial-free station that's not influenced by big business.
Definitely shouldn't be privatised, and if that's where it's going, I would be opposed to that. Too hard to choose.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, that's a tough one.
We really enjoy the serials they have on and the comedy. The comedy's great.
Pepper the Pig, because that's the one that government seems to want to keep for some extraordinary reason. So cut Pepper the Pig.
As long as they don't touch Mad as Hell, I'm happy.
The Minister for Revenue and Financial Services, Kelly O'Dwyer, is here now live with me in the BuzzFeed News bunker. I mean, it's a bit makeshift, but
it's pretty groovy.
We're living within our means.
You are.
Kelly,
well, that's good. You and government living within our means.
Now, before we get to the big super news and the Productivity Commission's report, I just wanted to ask you about the breaking news that Michaelia Cash, the Jobs Minister, has been reissued with a subpoena in the AW's case into the raids that happened in October last year.
Right.
Now, I just wanted to get an idea. There's been a lot of pressure in estimates for her to answer questions. She's been refusing to talk about whether or not she's been interviewed by the AFP. Is this causing too much drama for the government? Is it time that the minister maybe took a step down from the front bench?
Well, I'm a big supporter of Michaelia's, and it must have broken in my way running up here to you, so I haven't actually seen that news, but obviously during the Senate estimates process, Michaelia Cash, like other ministers, answer questions on behalf of the government. She's responsible for answering questions in question time.
But I think the issue here is that she isn't answering questions, and she's been asked, I think I counted 20 times yesterday, as to whether she's been interviewed by the AFP and what is happening with the investigation, and she wouldn't answer.
Well, I actually don't know the answer. So if I could answer, I would answer, but I don't know the answer. So I think, unfortunately, Alice, that's probably a question that you're going to need to put to her.
That's all right. I'll try and stalk her in the corridors later. All right, let's talk super now. A big issue for young people, and I must confess, I did a survey of my friends last night, and I have friends in their 30s who have multiple super accounts with just $50, $100, $150 in them.
That's right.
Now, this is a huge issue for young people, I think, because you don't get access to your super till you retire, so no one thinks about it.
A lot of people don't think about it, and when they start their very first job, a lot of the time they're covered by an enterprise bargaining agreement, so they're forced to put their money into a particular fund. They start a new job, and they're again forced to put their money into a different fund, and they accumulate multiple funds, multiple sets of fees, multiple insurance premiums. I was chatting to somebody last night, and I also did the little quiz, and he told me that he had 7 accounts.
Wow.
That after he heard the news about how much it could cost him in retirement, he consolidated.
It's hundreds of thousands of dollars, potentially.
For somebody who's starting out, it could be around about $400,000 in their ultimate retirement savings, which is a really significant amount of money.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely important for people to pay attention, and it's very easy now because people can get online with MyGov through the ATO. They can see how many accounts they have, and they can in fact consolidate them. But we're going to make it even easier for them in the budget. We're going to say if you've got an inactive account, so if you haven't been putting money in because you've moved on to that next job, and it's a low balance account, so it's less than $6,000, we're going to automatically put your accounts together through the Australian Taxation Office, so it can be in one account where you've got one set of fees, one set of insurance premiums that you're paying, and it can mean that you then get the benefit of all of that compounding interest that you would otherwise not be getting because you're paying all of those fees.
Now, this data matching system will be information from the ATO, which I know caused a few hiccups recently with the robo-debt scandal that happened in a different, not your department, in the Social Services, Human Services Centrelink department. But is it the same technology that's going to be matching up? Can we... how much of a guarantee do you have that they'll be able to find the right accounts to put the money in?
Yeah, so we know that they've got a very good understanding as to who you are, and they've got a very good understanding as to what accounts you might have. Part of the issue has been that people, when they form new accounts, can give their full name, one of their names, and so there can be a level of confusion. I have heard some really terrible stories about people who have been with the same fund, worked for different employers, but who have been given multiple accounts with the one fund, which again means multiple fees.
Wouldn't it be all streamlined with a tax file number though?
So the ATO are able to use those identifiers to be able to match people up, and that is exactly what they're going to be doing. That will start as of the 1st of July next year, because there needs to be a lead-in time, a transition time, but we also need to make sure we get the legislation passed, and that's something that we're calling on the Labor Party to agree to straight away because of the benefit it will deliver to millions of Australians, particularly low income earning Australians and younger Australians, who are the ones who are often most ripped off by the system as it currently stands.
Well, we also had a question from Twitter, putting your Minister for Women hat on, about women who have disrupted work. So if they have to take time off, or if they go on maternity leave, how will these changes affect them? Because I think one of the biggest issues for women is that they get stuck in these holding patterns.
So people will be notified by their fund that either they've got a low balance account and that it could be transferred over, and so they will have the opportunity to either make a very small payment in to keep it active if that's what they want to do, or it can just automatically happen. Similar with insurance, that will be the same if they want to be able to keep their insurance. There's 13 months, and there have been a number of studies that have been done. Often people return if they're going to go back to work within that period of time, so we believe that the number of people who will be impacted will be relatively relatively small, but we also believe that funds have in fact got a duty and a responsibility to have these active discussions with their members. They say that they know their members, but they've actually got to talk to them, communicate with them and ask them what is it that they want. Because so many funds, I think, forget that this money doesn't belong to them. It actually belongs to the individual and it should be working for them. We're also doing one other thing that I think you'd be interested in for women, which is to make it easier for women who have time out of the workforce, whether it's because they've had children or because they're caring for a relative, to be able to make catch-up contributions on their superannuation. This is something that we announced with our tax changes 2 budgets ago, so that when you have the financial capacity to be able to make additional contributions, you can do that by rolling over the concessional contribution cap that you have right now, which is up to $25,000 every year.
So do you think that would make up for a woman being out of the workforce for a year or two to add in additional money? But that's assuming that she earns enough to do it.
That will work particularly well for those women who have got higher incomes or who, for instance, come into some money because of an inheritance or something like that. It will actually provide additional flexibility for those people to be able to do it. But we also have protections for women who are not on high incomes. The low income super tax offset, for instance, for those women who would otherwise be paying a lower marginal tax rate than the tax that would apply, the 15% tax rate that would apply on their superannuation. We make sure that they pay the lower amount of tax.
Now, I've got another question here from Twitter. Sarah Masting asks, why do business owners who have not paid superannuation to employees get an amnesty, yet Centrelink recipients who were possibly overpaid 6 years ago get threatened with criminal proceedings?
Right, I'm really pleased that I've been asked that question. There are a number of Australians out there who have not been paid their entitlements by their employer. Often it's small and medium-sized businesses who are struggling with cash flow.
Yeah.
And what they do is they use the superannuation guarantee payments that they should have paid to workers to try and keep themselves afloat. But it often
Which is
leads
a crime,
to a business,
though, isn't it?
Totally a crime. Absolutely a crime, and it's wrong. It shouldn't happen, and the government has been absolutely categorical about that. What we want to do is we want to make sure that the ATO not only continue to go after those employers who are doing the wrong thing and hit them with massive penalties, but we've also said to those businesses, if you have done the wrong thing, you have a small period of time to come forward, to fess up, to say we're going to make good every single payment that we owe our employees, plus interest, so that the worker themselves gets access to the superannuation that they have been denied. And instead of the government getting an additional penalty payment from the company, we're going to waive that so that we can turbocharge the right payments being made
to get the money to the right people, right?
To get the money to the people.
Is there a cap on how much people can, if a business comes forward and says, whoops, I haven't paid $5 million worth here. Is there some kind of, I guess the question is based about hypocrisy and why businesses should be able to get away with committing a crime.
Well, those businesses that don't come forward will be hit with really tough penalties, and more than that, we're the first government to basically say we're going to put people in jail for not making their payments to their workers that they should. But it's a carrot and stick approach.
Yeah.
We want to turbocharge money getting to people, getting in their accounts. And we anticipate that through this amnesty, there are around 50,000 people who will get up to $230 million that they otherwise might not get as quickly. And we think that it is right to do that so that they can get access to that money very quickly. We do sort of similar things in the tax space as well, where we've said people who've had, tax issues need to come forward and fess up, otherwise they're going to be hit with high penalties. Those people who don't fess up, they're going to have high penalties, be hit with those penalties and could in fact face jail.
So if someone comes forward in the amnesty and says, I did something wrong, here you go, we'll fix it all out, I won't get any kind of punishment, and then say we've got 13 months of the amnesty, say 6 months later come back again and said, oh, actually, I've done it again. Will they face a penalty the second time?
They will absolutely face a penalty.
All right, that makes sense. Now, we've got another question here, another Minister for Women hat. We had a report earlier about Ireland overturning the ban on abortion over the weekend. Most people don't realise, but it is still a criminal offence in 2 states in Australia. As the Minister for Women, do you think it's time that we decriminalised abortion across the country?
I don't know why it would be a criminal offence in those states. I think that my personal view on this particular issue is that women should have a right to choose, and I believe that we shouldn't have criminal laws on the state books that would actually deny women that choice. So I think for those states, they ought to look very carefully and very closely at the laws that they have, and they should perhaps get around to doing something about it.
Do you think, obviously it is a state or territory issue, but as the federal minister, can you put a bit of weight on them, saying it's 2018, maybe it's time that we update these laws?
Well, look, I have dialogues with my counterparts in the states and territories. I'll continue to do that. There are lots of discussions that we have over a whole range of issues. I'll continue to do that, and I think this is one of those issues that will no doubt be a strong focus for many of them.
Now, finally, I have to ask you about the big news of the day. Barnaby Joyce, he has announced that he's taking some personal leave.
I thought it was going to be something else, like it was your birthday or something.
No, not this week. Now, you made some very strong statements yesterday saying that you didn't agree with the money payment. Is one of the reasons that Barnaby Joyce has gone on leave because he's been copping criticism from his colleagues?
Look, I don't know the reason, and I'm not going to sort of go into some hypothesis as to why it is he might have taken leave. I totally get, being someone who's been in the parliament, who's had 2 children whilst in the parliament, that people of both genders, mums and dads, would want to spend time with their newborn children. I get that.
He did call for an end to maternity leave.
Yeah, well, you know, look, he might have a newfound view on these sorts of things.
Maybe.
Who knows? Maybe that's a question that you can put to him. So
Yeah.
look, I wish him all the best. I certainly don't resolve from the comments that I made. You know, I don't think politicians should be paid for media interviews. Certainly, you're not paying me, Alice, for this interview.
We don't have the budget. Look around. Look around.
And frankly, you know, I think it's a slippery slope if that happens.
But do you think it's potentially a sigh of relief for the government to have him out of the picture potentially for overkilling season, as they like to call the next few months of Parliament?
I take it at face value, which is that, you know, he's going to spend some time with his family, and, you know, I wish him the best.
Well, Minister, thanks so much for joining us here on BuzzFeed OzPol, and we will be back in a few minutes with the best of your tweets. Hit me up, #BFOzPol.
I asked the Prime Minister, if you are so confident about your view of fight back, why won't you call an early election?
The answer is because I want to do you slowly. You're so macho. Twice you've had a chance to take the opposition leadership. Now, when I told our caucus last year that you were a low-altitude flyer, I was right, wasn't I?
Just Howard being Howard, isn't it, you know? The little desiccated coconut's under pressure and he's attacking anything he can get his hands on.
And as far as you're concerned, unless you're scripted, you're useless. I mean, half of the former Queensland Cabinet is in jail. Just a Commodore Garden Conservative right-wing hack. Mr. Speaker, unless he's in with a question in his hand written by someone on his staff, he's useless.
Poor old Costello, he's all tip and no iceberg.
Are you accepting it?
No, of course
No.
not. Rubbish. Mr. Speaker, give him a Valium. Give him a Valium, Mr. Speaker. He needs it.
He's already dead.
I mean, if Tony Abbott ends up the Prime Minister of Australia, I mean, you've got to say, God help us. God help us.
You fraud. You disgraceful, disgusting fraud.
With me now in the BuzzFeed News bunker is Rachel Baxendale from The Australian and Myles Morgan from SBS. Guys, thanks so much. I know it's been a very busy morning. I feel like you've literally run to get in here.
Running heels from all Parliament House.
First
great
up,
to be here.
Let's talk about Barnaby Joyce. So we've had the news today that he's taking some personal leave. Rachel, you wrote about this in The Australian today. Do you think it's Is it because of the criticism he's received over the paid interview? Has it all become too much? What are the reasons that he's decided to go and leave?
Look, I think that has put immense pressure on him, and that's got to be the reason why he's made this decision. Obviously, no official reason was given. He's been granted leave by the Nationals whip, Michelle Landry. Interestingly, yesterday he was forecast. He said that he was planning to have a meeting with the Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull. That meeting actually didn't end up going ahead, and then it was announced that he was taking leave. So quite interesting, not especially surprising. I don't think their relationship these days is particularly good.
The Prime Minister said this morning that he wasn't aware that this leave had even been requested.
Indeed. I was on the news desk late last night, and we rang the Prime Minister's office, and they sort of referred us to the Nationals, really, because it was a decision that was made by the whip. So, quite interesting. But certainly the pressure has been on Barnaby since news of this $150,000 interview broke. And of course, we've seen excerpts of it. It's got to screen on Sunday night, and you can only really see that pressure amping up between now and when it does screen. So,
I thought it was
understandable. He's got a new
decision.
baby. Understandable that it probably would be a good time to take some leave.
Well, as I was talking to Kelly O'Dwyer about, he didn't believe in maternity leave about a year ago. So it's good to see he's changed his mind for his new son. Myles, I wanted to ask. He made a very public entrance to Parliament yesterday. He decided to come in through the public car park. He could have come in through any of the other entrances and avoided the media. What do you think it's hypocritical? He's asking for privacy when he's being paid for an interview. He's purposely doing walks around the building in front of cameras.
Yeah, look, it's a fair point. And look, nothing happens in Parliament by chance, rarely, especially entrances. You can choose where to enter the building and how you want to do it.
Yeah, unless you hide behind a whiteboard.
Yeah, unless there's a whiteboard around.
Yeah.
But you have to remember, this is a politician that came out, I think it was earlier this year, and publicly criticised his boss, the Prime Minister, saying his comments on the whole issue were inept and unnecessary. So for that man to now be claiming he wants his privacy, I think rubs some people the wrong way, because they think, well, what was good for you now that wasn't good for you then, or vice versa. He has been claiming he's been stalked by the paparazzi drones flying over his home. Look, I think everyone's entitled to their privacy, and there's a limit to what people can cop. He's obviously made a decision that now is the time to take a step back, but at the same time, this tell-all interview with his wife and new son, I think someone was saying yesterday, just doesn't pass the pub test, and I'm sure it won't for many people.
Well, I was trying to think in terms of book deals. Every politician in this building has had a book deal, wants a book deal. It's all anyone thinks about, trying to get their ideas out there.
Absolutely. Barnaby's working on a book.
Well, he is. Yes. So much calls for privacy.
On the weatherboard and iron. People in the weatherboard and iron.
So is there any comparison to be made between getting a book deal and a book advance to doing an interview on TV? It's just, we haven't seen the TV interviews, but we see book deals practically every week.
Yeah, look, really interesting question. I hadn't thought about it like that. And I guess it is, a book is a form of someone being paid, I guess it's cash for comment in some in some circumstances. But I think it's a bit of a different medium. Often it gives a politician an opportunity to sort of really put their kind of political philosophy out there for the public to read. I think the public benefits from it. In that sense. And I guess the other thing I'd point out is that no one, particularly not politicians, makes $150,000 from a book deal these days.
Yeah.
Well, I've looked at some of the book stats. I don't think they're making any money at all. I guess the kind of follow-up question to that is, should we be banning politicians from giving these sorts of interviews because it's caused this much of a stir? Or is this just a phenomenal publicity campaign by Channel 7, and should we all just give them a big thumbs up for garnering up interest?
Channel 7, they've obviously been working on this for months to secure this, and I think it will be a ratings winner, judging by all the commentary about it so far. But the idea of a politician receiving money, a politician who was elected to be accountable to the public in any case.
And he is earning $200,000 a year.
He's on a very healthy salary as it is. So the idea that he'll be receiving money, I know he's saying it was Vicky Campion's idea. I still don't think that passes the sniff test, in that a politician who we've elected to be accountable for free, or we are paying his salary in any case, is now getting effectively 100% extra to do an interview with the media in an open democracy like Australia. I think it will rub a lot of people the wrong way. And I think, honestly, they could have avoided this. if they'd done an interview while Vicky was pregnant, if she'd come out and done a bit of a tabloid spread or something, rather than going through the mess of all the paparazzi and the stalking. So there's an argument.
They could have done a sit down, take some nice photos of us.
Yeah.
We'll explain our story.
Yeah.
Could have wrapped it up in a week.
And look, far be it from me, I'm not a parent or anything, far be it from me to tell someone how to do their pregnancy, but it just feels like it would have taken a lot of the political heat and it wouldn't be so politically toxic like the situation we're in now.
All right, I wanted to ask one final question before we wrap up. It is about Super Saturday, the big, huge by-election, 28th of July. We are week 1 into, what is it, a 9-week campaign?
Yeah, 8 or 9 weeks.
It's
very,
long,
9 weeks.
long
Yeah.
time.
Longer than the 2016 election campaign, which was long.
And in the Australian today, we've already had the Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, come out and say, they're doing Mediscare again. It is back. Are we really going to suffer through another 9 weeks of Mediscare?
Well,
Myles,
look,
what do you think?
I think Mediscare was obviously a winner for the coalition last year. It probably contributed to them winning the election in casting that Mediscare aspersion on Labor. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that's especially true in politics.
Will people fall for it again?
It's hard to say. I think I would give voters, I think you've got to treat them with a bit more intelligence. So I think just uttering Mediscare will not have the same impact that it did before.
Yeah.
But the story was about Labor's social media, which the government don't. So are they jealous that theirs is better? What's the situation?
It was, look, it's Labor's social media, and this topic also came up in question time yesterday. So effectively what's happened is last week, Bill Shorten was on the campaign trail in Longman with Susan Lamb up in Queensland. They visited the Caboolture Hospital, and he came out and said, look, this hospital's had a $2.9 million cut under the Turnbull government. Mediscare, vote Labor. and Catherine King, the health minister, asked a question about this in question time yesterday. Malcolm Turnbull really sort of went out on the front foot. He said, look, the Caboolture Hospital says that hospitals in that area have had a 53% increase in funding recently. It is actually really difficult to work out, you know, there's kind of, the truth is kind of a bit halfway between the two. It's actually really difficult. The whole health funding area is quite complex. We had our, the Australian's health editor, Sean Parnell, wrote an article today about the fact that basically health is funded largely by state governments, but also a bit by federal governments. So this all comes down to a big fight between the Commonwealth and Labor governments. And the Commonwealth will actually be returning, I think it's $309.2 million to the Queensland government from services that were provided in Queensland hospitals in the 2016-17 financial year on the 7th of June. So look, maybe that'll help even things up. I'm not entirely sure. And look, the other stat that was interesting that Sean had in his article today is that over the last few years, the tax to federal health expenditure ratio has risen. It's at 27% at the moment, but that's actually lower than what it was in 2009-2010 when Labor were in power, which was 28.7%. So look, it's going to be an ongoing argument. Voters are going to have to really sort of go through things with a fine-tooth comb as our journalists to work out who's telling the truth. But yeah, I reckon we're going to see a lot more Mediscare.
All right, Rachel, Myles, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank
And that
you.
is all that we have time for this week here in the BuzzFeed News Bunker on OzPol Live. We will be back when Parliament returns, which is not until next month, so a few weeks away. Of course, if you missed anything in today's show, they'll be up on @BuzzFeed OzPol and on my Twitter account @WorkmanAlice. That's all we have time for now. Until next time, we will catch you on the timeline.